One of the things I enjoy doing on Sundays is bringing you new faces with new stories. We're going to have a young man on this channel who's been on a few times, actually won an award at the last Las Vegas event for being a valued member of the One Rental at a Time community. Last week, we heard from Mikey that we should do some portfolio reviews. So guess what? We're going to do some portfolio reviews. Jared, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, pretty good. I heard you say that, and I was like, man, free opportunity to learn from someone who's been in the business for a couple decades. For people that don't know, I'm brand new. I've been in it about a year and some change, so I'm learning every day.
That's awesome. Well, why don't you just give a quick introduction, remind folks what you're doing, what your model is. Then we'll get into your questions about the portfolio, and we'll see if we can help you and help some others.
All right. Well, first of all, I'm Jared, REI Jared on the socials, Instagram and YouTube. Thanks for having me on, Mike. But yeah, I'm a relatively new investor. I bought my first house in late 2023, brought it online January 1st. Since then, I've got 4 properties now, 3 active, 1 just finished construction, and I'm doing co-living. I'm doing rent by room. And I turned big houses in non-HOA, no pool, plenty of parking areas into rent by room, and I make them 8 bedrooms, no more, no less, with 3 bathrooms. So
Okay.
I've got 3 active now, earning around 2K net per house, something like that. And a couple of them because I was the first one I bought as a primary and lived in it, and then did the rent by room, and then the second and third one I bought with DSCR loans.
Okay.
Because I was a novice investor, I had to put 25% down on the first one and then 30% down on the next one, and that hurt because these are $500,000 homes.
Yeah.
So that was a little rough. And then I recently just bought the fourth one as a primary. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
I've got a little bit of equity in the 2 DSCRs potentially there. And so I'd asked in a previous meeting about how far you'd push it loan to value and whatnot. So I guess I just want to throw it out there and say, hey, I'm in growth mode, brand new. Advice, or hey, what can I do specifically around the potential for if rates do drop equity? Even if they don't, I've run the math and I could pull if I wanted to now because I'm past the novice investor. The lenders were like, hey, you're a nut job. You don't have
What are you doing?
I didn't even have I didn't have a tax year done.
Right.
And so they were like, whoa, hold your horses there. But now I'm considered not novice anymore, and I've got some relationships and whatnot. So
yeah. So I think there's a couple of things. Again, we'll bring the audience up to speed on our previous conversation. Some people come into this like Dave Ramsey, thou shalt pay cash and nothing less for investment properties. Some folks come into this, they want to kind of split the difference and they'll do 50% LTVs and sleep well at night. To be clear, lots of us, myself included, when we were in growth mode, it was all about equity extraction, 1031 exchanges. It was all about taking little piles of equity and moving it around so we could grow more, right? That's why you referenced the word growth mode. I think investors are in 1 or 2 modes, growth or chill. I am now in chill. You're still in growth mode. So let's get that out. I don't think there is anything wrong with going and pushing LTV to as high as the lender will allow with some caveats. First, never produce an alligator. You've heard that story lots of time. It's in my first book. There's nothing worse than having to work 2 hours a week to pay for someone to live in your house. Don't do that. Second, you've got to be able to sleep at night, right? If you're not sleeping because of finances, you're pushing it too hard. Third, some folks, operate in a world where their job is not secure or they don't have the emergency reserves behind them. Don't push it. When you kind of take those caveats out, hammer down. I was in growth mode and I was never confused. We were always between 75 and 80% levered for 12 years. Easy during the process. Now we're into it 20 years and we're nowhere close to that. So first off, it's okay if that's where you are. The other thing that I like about your story is you now have evidence. That's why your lenders treat you different. You're not this risky wild cat who's, just flying by the seat of your pants. You've got tax returns. You've got multiple units. You've bought and created several of these. So you have a reason to be confident that you could use acceleration to grow. So I see no problem with equity extraction when the time is right and the numbers make sense. Fully bless that for you. The second thing that you might want to think about, again, I'm going to be very clear when I say this. This is something Olivia and I would not do. Would not do. But plenty of investors do. You happen to have a model that's working with evidence. So you might be able to do some equity raises, right? You might be able to go out and create some joint ventures so that you could go faster. You're going to have to figure out a model that makes sense. You know, here's another idea. It's really going to boil down to, do you want these partners to be debt, which I am 100% comfortable with, or do you want them to be equity? Lots of people do it. Olivia and I never did. Because in theory, you could make them a debt partner today. Like, go to property 2 and go, here's the monopoly card for this property, right? This is how it's performing. I will, I'll put you in a second position, $50K or whatever. You don't have to go to a bank. You could get debt from private lenders. It'll be expensive, but it'll be 8, 9, 10%, I would suspect. But that could probably work today. But what might be even more valuable is to get equity partners, right? You could go, we'll be equity partners. I don't know what it would be, 70, 30, 50, 50. That's for you to figure out. But if you could start raising equity and you'd have to do everything right, create the LLCs, all of those things. You could really add gasoline to this. That's the thing that I would be thinking about is, do I want to do this, or am I totally comfortable? And again, I'll say it just so it's clear. Olivia and I would never do it, but lots of people do. I mean, Pace Morby, right? You've been on his channel, Pace. He's all about raising equity partners. So that's something you're going to have to sit around and ask yourself, I think.
Yeah, I've tried that a few times, and for whatever reason, to the last minute, they brought on third parties, like the whoever the wholesaler was. Oh, they want to be part of the deal. It's like, that kills the deal. So, which is fine, because at that time I was trying to test out partnerships anyway, and they tested it out for me before we got there. Yeah. With the equity piece, I'm kind of anal, and I want to run things my way. And in the past, I've done that, and people are like, well, "What about this?" I was like,
"Yeah." Once you do that, So that's exactly why I would never do an equity partner. But again, I wanted to be clear. Many people do.
Yeah.
But again, so back to the first one, debt. This because you've read my book. We raised millions of dollars twice as debt, and you could start running the same game, right? Let's just say you wanted to raise $100,000. You could work with your network, go out there, second position loan, very secure position, $100,000. It's, I don't know, whatever the payment is, $750 or whatever it is. You put that on property number 1, that buys property number 5. Then you put it on property number 2, that buys property number 6. You could kind of play Pac-Man with this, and probably do 2 a year that way, because you got to make sure that, like when you take equity from 1 and you buy 5, you don't want to do another one until 5 is performing. So if it takes you 90 days to do the construction phase or whatever, and it takes, maybe it takes another 90 days to get the 8 rooms rented. So you wouldn't do property 2 until 6 months. You don't want to do 5 equity raises on the same time, because then you've got too much debt and not enough income producing. So you could play Pac-Man. That's probably what Olivia and I would do. Is we would go to property 1, which we have the most equity in because you bought it the longest ago. We'd go find a debt partner, second position, $100K. And then I would use that to buy property 5. I would work that for 6 months. It goes online. Then I would go to property 2 for 6 months, and then property 3. And then you would just daisy chain those together. And before you know it, you've got 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to get to 10 actually, so that's the goal. 9 would do it, but 10's just that much better.
Yeah.
The extraction equity, there's it's so funny. There's 3 or 4 different ways to go with that, if I can even get it right. That's the thing, and especially with the rates. Hey, I had a question. So my strategy, right? Room by room, they do cash flow, right? But I bought 2 of them, partially because the lender said I had to have it this way. It was based on LTR, long-term rentals. That hasn't changed much. Matter of fact, if the rents have kind of softened, if I go extract equity, because part of my and this might lead back to what you said earlier. Like I feel a little bit more comfortable now, but in the beginning I had no idea. And so if I extract that equity, I'm guessing that I've done the math. I don't think let's see, my LTR, I don't think would fly. And so I would be stuck. In the past, people said, hey, we have multiple exits. If for some reason, let's say the laws changed and rent by room got canned, which I don't think is going to happen, the LTR wouldn't cover the debt. And so that's
Oh, it's absolutely. I mean, just ask the people that got into Airbnb at the peak of the market, right? I mean, that's certainly a risk. Yeah, I mean that's always going to be a risk with the new model, relatively new model like this. So it's a valid concern. That's why I think going private money versus bank money is the way to go for the second, because then you're going to educate them on what's actually happened. You're going to show them the numbers, and an individual who's going to, maybe you're going to give them 8%, 9%, whatever you're going to give them in a secured position. Then you're going to have to do the worst case scenario. You're going to okay, let's say the laws change. You're going to have to show them how they're protected, because worst case scenario is you have to go in, you have to strip out the walls, put it back together, and then probably sell it, right? That's the worst case scenario. And, as long as that math works where they're still made whole and maybe you lose some equity, if that's the worst case scenario, that's a pretty secure position.
Yeah. I've also been kicking around the idea. The reason I can do some of this stuff is I've got a couple $100,000 rolling over in T-bills.
Sure.
And the only reason I haven't spent it is actually time. We just picked up this other house and we dropped about $90,000 or whatever with the time, because I do have a full-time W-2, and it's a lot harder to do this. When I got the first 3, I wasn't working. So this is way harder. But if I took that, I've got one property. It's appraised around let's say call 500, and I only owe 300. I could extract that 150 out of those other 2, and then take 150 of and pay it off. I know that I don't normally want to do this, but then pull a first lien HELOC or leverage that, because a lot of people, you mentioned the second lien position. A lot of people don't want to do that, especially nowadays. And even if you do, the rates are pretty high. So at least with my network and people like that. So I thought about there's a couple banks now that do a first lien HELOC, and I'm doing Velocity Banking, which I think but they do an all-in-one first lien HELOC. I would never do a first lien HELOC on a property that had a lot of debt, but if it was paid off or low, like a 10-20% loan to value, then I could, because for fear of the rates going up, that's a variable rate, then I could pay it off. But I thought about this for the banks, but you just brought up something that if I had something paid off, I could potentially, somebody could use that for leverage for a lien position, private money, and go out and buy, maybe, depending on how much they'd want to lend me on the damn thing, 2-3 houses.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
That's the key is I think you have to go out, and I think you have to talk to your network and see what people are comfortable with. I'm certainly to the point where I have some borrowers, or no, I guess they're lenders, some lenders in second position. But again, I've got 20 years of track record, lots of that. So I don't think I would write that off entirely. But I think going out and going, hey, which one do you like? Do you want to be in second position, which is a little bit more risky, but I'll pay you more? Or do you want to be in first position, more secure? But the other thing you're going to have to remember is you're going to have to find a private lender that's willing to give you $300,000 or, $400,000. That's a big number, because you can't do multiple. But it's certainly possible. That's I think your job is to figure out who might be interested in co-living but doesn't have the time to make it work. Yeah. So I don't think I'd write off private money just yet. I think I'd start you know what I would do? You have a YouTube channel. I would start talking about it. I'd start modeling it and see if you got any bites.
I just did that the last video I did, matter of fact, because
I've
got, if I was to go, I could probably buy 2, maybe 3 more houses on my own, and that would get me to, see, I'm at 5 houses, 4, I'd be at 7, and I'd be short by 2. I need 2 more. And that's for Dion, the insurance and things like that. So yeah, I just started doing that actually. And I started off as a private money lender. So
there you go.
I have that old network, right? And I've been re-engaging with those folks, but the temperature has changed since I started that. People aren't as willing to do second lien positions like I was doing that. And even I switched to first lien positions too, which is it's tough, It's tough right now.
No, and again, it won't. The other thing is, it won't always be this way. I guarantee you, second lien position will be a lot better in a couple of years, as people, as we normalize what's going on. But yeah, this is a whole process. The other thing I'll just highlight is raising private money is not a one and done thing. So congratulations on doing your first. You're going to probably have to talk about it for 90 days, right? Back in the day, the first $1 million we raised private money, I was writing blogs, right? Wealth Building Pro. I think I don't own it anymore, but I think there's some copies of it out there. You can go and find it and just see the articles I was writing or posts I was writing. And in those posts, I think I got to number 10 or 11, and people in my network started hitting me up.
Yeah.
Right. So keep going, keep being consistent.
I work at, well, you know where I work. I'll just say I work at Intel, and I've had people ask me things like that, and they're really green, right? You're not going to believe, well, actually you might. I know people that have 100+ grand sitting in their checking account.
I know them.
And I'm like, are you kidding me?
I know a guy that has more than 250 grand sitting in his checking account. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? What are you doing?
Wow. Yeah, it must be nice.
Yeah, I guess. Or stupid, one or the other. Yeah. It's crazy. All right, I digress. So is this was this helpful? Any other kind of?
Yeah, some of it's validation, some of it's exploration, and I'm like I said, I'm pretty new, so some of this stuff I am a little nuts though. I do tend to jump into stuff, so my problem is I have to slow down and make sure things, seriously think about it before I owe Mark Ashiro, financial firefighter, Dion, Matt the lumberjack, Coach Carson, all those guys at your first ORAD event. They looked at my eyes and they said, and I didn't listen to them. Coach Carson was the one that really got through, but they were all saying, "Hey man, slow down. Talk to the smart guy," because I was going to buy everything, and stuff. So I'm glad I did that, because Chad said, hey man, look, I'm going to tell you like this so you understand it, because he saw I was just nuts. I was going to buy everything, and I had one property at the time, and he said, look, you can go out. This is key too. You can go out, buy 10 properties, and then you're going to find out you made some mistakes and you've paid that cost. But if you go out and buy one, you learn those mistakes, you avoided that cost 9 times. And he was right too. Nothing big, but like heating bills, smart fans. In my co-living strategy, a lot of different niche things that I learned on the first one. Granted, it was 4 months later, and I bought my second, and then 5 months, my third. Now I'm on my fourth, but within a year. But still, I learned enough to know what I needed to do and just go for it, because I'm kind of like, all right, well, I know enough. Let's figure it out as we go.
There you go. Yeah. Vegas event, first one, second one's amazing. You also won an award, so congratulations.
Yeah, man. I love this thing, man. I need to get a display, but I got to tell you, man, getting through the airport, that was fun, because I didn't have. So me, I'm very frugal. So I traveled down there, and I didn't have luggage. I wore 3 pairs of clothes and flew on Frontier, right? So coming back, all I had was my laptop, and I put that thing, I folded it in my laptop with 2 laptops, that thing, and wires. I could only imagine what that X-ray machine looked like.
What the heck was this?
They're like, what is this thing, right? So they held me up for a while, and they were asking. I was like, yeah, I was at an award. I was at an event, and I won an award. Like, okay, it was interesting.
That's very, very cool. Yeah. Well, you are a key member of school. You're doing weekly accountability groups. Where can people find you, and tell us what day and time is the accountability group?
Accountability group every Sunday, 12:30 Pacific. It's a Zoom call. It's usually 2, 3, maybe sometimes 4 hours. But you can find me on the Instagram at REIJARROD, or YouTube, same thing, REIJARROD. I talk about co-living, finances. I'm into velocity banking. So if you don't know what that is, you can Google it or check out my YouTube channel. And to me, I know the people that have already hit their plateau, they're great, but in growth mode, for me, it's fantastic. So
there you go, Jared. Thank you for all you do, man. I appreciate you. Have a great Sunday, and it is Mother's Day. So a shout out to all the mothers. Take care.